Today I want to cover the Book of AI, Chapter 10, Conditional Responses. You can find this under Build. You go to Book of AI. Then just click on Chapter 10. If you scroll all the way down, you can find a very, very brief response of gender-based responses. Well, this doesn't really show much, and most people will probably be confused seeing this first. Now, I'm going to show you how to set up gender-based responses, also preference. So like, let's say your bot has a preference for a certain gender, or the user has a certain preference. So if we go over to my bot, in script initialization, if you go to your bot's settings, you're going to want to add this. Let me move that over. This will give you a default memory in place for gender. For me, I don't have to have two of them, one for the user and one for the bot, because the bot's gender is already known, while the user's is not. So I'm going to default the user's to dunno, while the bot is already set to a boy. Now, for preference on the other hand, I have to set up one for the bot. The only difference is this little N. It stands for Neko. So both are set to dunno, because the user doesn't know his preference, and the bot doesn't know your preference. These are the only three you're going to need to add to this. Don't mind the rest, that's just other stuff I use. And then just make sure you scroll down and you hit update bot. Now, when we go to my bot, let's say, let me open up this. These are going to be the key phrases you are going to need. Right here, this one, let's say you ask the bot, are you a male or are you a female? It doesn't need to be separate key phrases for each. This is a singular key phrase that will catch everything. So pretty much, once a user asks any of these, it'll get caught. So like if I go back here and we go to, let me find it. Here. Okay. This one's probably not the greatest example, but in my case, since I have clothing memories in place, instead of using and also since his gender is already technically known, I don't need much AI script to cover it. But you'll mention it anyways, as you can see. While, if we do something like this, like one for users to be able to change their gender if they already have a gender in place. Let's scroll down to here. Or no, this one is for if you want to change his gender. In my case, my bot doesn't have a gender switching. Main reason why I wouldn't recommend doing this is because if you start making a very complicated bot, the idea of having a full gender switch is very, very time consuming. So I would personally recommend just have something in place to tell them that that's not possible. But if you want to go that route, go ahead. Now, as for, let's say the user wants to know what genders are available. This one I would recommend keeping in raw mode for AI script, simply because for some reason it doesn't work all that well with the rest of the key phrases, so make sure you keep it in raw mode. Now, I don't call it. For me, you could have it where it just pops up a list and says all the genders. For me, I just have it where people can go to the update page to see all that information along with all the other stat page specific like genders, preferences, room, statuses, so on. But I'd recommend this just so that catches people. Now, let's say you want to actually register their gender. I would recommend having multiple. So like, here's the I am a female, or my gender is so on, so on. You're going to need multiple key phrases for each type of gender you're going to have in place. In my case, there's 4 total. There's female, trap, male, and fuda. 2 of them aren't really all that used, they're just there for it to be able to catch people. So, for example, if a female, you'd want this as your key phrase. Well, if they were a trap, you'd want this. So if I go back here, we scroll down to this one. As you can see, it starts out with him not knowing the gender, and then he's remembering the gender as female. Remember, make sure the as only is there, because you don't want it to end up being female, male, female, trap, so on. And it's just going to make your life a lot easier if you use as only. Now, you can also go a bit more complicated with it. Like, let's say they've already had a gender in place, but they decide to change their gender. Let's say they were already a trap, and now they're saying they're a female. You'd have a response for that, for them switching. That's what I've did. It just adds a little bit more, like, more essence to your bot. Now, what's next? I mean, that covers most of just the basic. You can do a what am I as well. If we go... this one. We have what's my gender, what's my sex, and we'll see if he knows the gender, he'll say. While if he doesn't, he'll also have something that covers it. All you have to do is add these if statements for gender. Now, I do have a little section here for the preferences. So if prefer female trap, it's the same way you would have the I am a female, I am a trap thing. It's set up pretty much the same. So, if we go back and I type in preferences, just to shorten it for you. Let's say, right here, for I am, or I prefer, or am attracted to females, remember or female as only preference. While, if we go to do you or what is or are you, this one is referring to him. So like if we go to this one, this covers all genders and so on, as you can see. And then it remembers his preference. Now, there isn't much overall use for the preferences. Like, you could make very specific responses for when the user asks out the bot, saying like, oh, I didn't know you were into so-and-so, if they selected their preference as gay or lesbian or so on, and the bot doesn't correlate with it. You know what I mean? It just helps you add a little bit more detail to the bot. Now, you can also have, what do I prefer? And if he knows what you prefer, he'll say. So if we go to, where is it? Right here. If he knows the gender, or preference, he'll say, and if he doesn't, he'll say he doesn't know yet, or you haven't told me. Also, keep in mind, let's go back to the gender one. This one right here. You gotta be very careful when you do longer key phrases like this. Like, this one has been edited multiple times just to make sure it catches as much as it physically can. If I add any more to this, it'll likely say it's over capped on the limit. You can add another key phrase that's very similar that'll also catch it. It's just you're likely going to have to copy all of this, including your seeks. So just keep that in mind. It does happen. I do kind of wish the key phrase limit was increased, but there's nothing you can really do about that. Now, that covers pretty much everything. I'll leave all the key phrases in the description for anybody who wants to copy it, just to save you time from having to write these out and figure them out yourself. But you'll have to write all the AI script for the responses. Now, here, I'll show you an actual use. So like, if we go to my bot, let's do reset. So now he's reset from the start. I'm not sure why that happened. It might be due to Christmas stuff. I have to look into that. But let's say we say, what gender are you? He'll pop up and say this, which that tells you he's a male. Now I say, let's do this. Now, he'll say he's into females. So if we go to the stat, or let's do S for his stats, we can see that's his preference. Now let's say, this. So now if we go to his stats, now we're going to say female and traps. That's his preferences. And then like I said, you already know his gender is male. Now if we go to your stats, currently your gender is unknown. So like, let's say you ask him to go out. Or let's do, what's the easiest way to do it? Currently I have it set up to where first he needs to know your gender and he wants you to move in before going as far as dating him. So first, move in. And then I have it where it catches off of this one. So now he still needs to know your gender before he'll do the date. So let's say, so now it catches it. So now he knows you're a female and he's accepted the date. So now if we go to my stats, we have female and relationship of girlfriend correlates with the female. Now if we were to change over to trap and say, now he'll change it. So now if we go to your stat page, they'll change it over for you without having you to redo all that work. Now if you were to change to something he doesn't like you say, he'll do this. Which now if you go to your stat page, you're no longer in a relationship. He'll put you back to roomie and he'll set your gender to the corresponding gender. Now that's just an example to show you how all this stuff works. You can also, if we go to, this one to load. can show you this. As you can see, this one is what gets caught a lot. We have the go on a date thing in this. As you can see, if I read, or depending on what your gender is, I also account for if you're already in a relationship and if your age doesn't meet the requirement, and so on. So like right here, if they don't know your gender, you'll ask for what your gender is first. If it's a gender he doesn't like, he'll give that response and won't go any further. Well, if it's a gender he does like, he'll remember that. Now, that should pretty much cover everything you'd need to know. Now, I'll keep all the AI script and such in the description if you need it, and I'll probably add little like annotation thingies, whatever you want to call them, for each section, just to make it easier for you guys. But I hope this helps you, and this covers everything you need to know. Eventually I might do a more in-depth look on all this stuff, just so you don't have to just glance at this and see how I did it. If there's any specific thing you want me to cover, like age, relationship, or let me think, like the clothing, how to get all that stuff to work, and if it's going to be very complicated or if it's going to be easy, just ask. I'll gladly do a little video on it.